My name is Lady Hazelthorn, and tonight, before you close your eyes, before your breath slows, before your thoughts fade into the quiet rhythm of the universe, allow me to take you by the hand, and guide you into a world shaped not by kings, nor by armies, nor by empires, but by a dreamer, a strange dreamer, a lonely dreamer, a stubborn dreamer, a dreamer who whispered to storms, and storms whispered back. His name was Nikola Tesla, but the man we remember as a genius did not begin as a legend. He began as a child, thin, quiet, unusual, staring at lightning, as though the sky were speaking a secret language only he could hear, and perhaps that is exactly what was happening. Tesla grew up where shadows moved like spirits, and silence felt ancient, a place where night came early, and the stars seemed closer to the earth, as though destiny hung waiting above his head. He grew up inside a world both simple and harsh, a world of handmade tools, wooden carts, cold winters, mud roads, and the smell of burning oak. But inside him, a universe roared. He saw shapes inside light, he saw motion inside stillness. He saw possibilities inside the impossible. Others saw a boy, he saw the future. But genius is not a gift wrapped in celebration, it is a weight, a fire, a storm that burns through the mind, and often burns through life. Nikola Tesla would spend his days chasing visions so bright they threatened to blind him, visions that lifted him higher, and pushed him deeper, visions that blessed him with ideas, and cursed him with loneliness. He would experience triumphs that shook the world, and betrayals that broke his spirit. He would be praised as a wizard, and dismissed as a madman. He would give the world power, and receive none in return. He would dream of lighting the entire earth, without a single wire, only to watch those dreams stolen, mocked, and destroyed. But even as the world ignored him, even as investors betrayed him, even as empires tried to break him, Tesla kept creating, because creation, for him, was not a choice, it was a calling. Tonight, I want to bring you into his mind, into his storms, into the bittersweet beauty of a life lived for knowledge, into the triumphs that shaped modern civilization, and the heartbreaks that attempted to erase him. I want to show you not just the inventions, not just the genius, but the man, the fragile, sensitive, brilliant soul, who walked the earth alone, while carrying the future inside his hands. This is not the story of a scientist, this is the story of a human being, who touched lightning and asked it to dance. Let us begin. He was born at midnight, not just any midnight, a midnight wrapped inside a violent storm that shook the sky with thunder, so loud the neighbors woke in fear. Lightning bathed the small wooden house with blinding flashes, wind howled through the cracks, rain hammered the roof. Inside, the midwife whispered, trembling, "This child will either be a child of light, or a child of darkness." His mother, exhausted but calm, answered softly, "No. He is a child of the storm." And so Nikola entered the world, in lightning, in chaos, in prophecy. From his earliest days, there was something unusual about him. He was quiet in a way that felt ancient. He watched everything, he remembered everything, he could see patterns where others saw chaos, he could imagine machines while staring at clouds, he could picture every gear, every bolt, every movement, without touching a single object. And then the visions began, flashes of light, images forming in the air, dreams so vivid they interrupted reality. His teachers misunderstood him, his classmates feared him, his mind frightened adults who believed such imagination came from spirits, not science. But his mother, she understood. She did not have books, but she had brilliance in her hands. She created tools, mechanical devices, household solutions, simple but ingenious. She saw his mind, she saw his potential, and she whispered the words that would define his destiny. "Your mind is a lantern, Nikola, do not hide it, let it burn." Those words ignited something deep inside him, something unstoppable. Tesla grew, and so did the storm within. He chased knowledge like other boys chased birds. He asked questions no one could answer. He stared at lightning for hours, feeling something inside him respond, as though electricity was not an external force, but a forgotten language his soul once knew. He wasn't like other children, he didn't want toys, he wanted ideas. He wanted understanding, he wanted the universe itself. But life was preparing to test him, for even the brightest stars must pass through darkness before they shine. I invite you now to step with me deeper into the fragile chambers of Nikola Tesla's youth, into a season of shadows, where the thin line between life and death became the gate through which destiny forced him to walk. Because before the world would ever know his brilliance, before he stood in laboratories where lightning bowed to his will, before his name was written in the quiet machinery of every modern city, he had to face a darkness that almost swallowed him whole. It began quietly, as tragedies often do, a fever, a cough, a night of restlessness. At first, his family believed it was simply exhaustion. Young Nikola read too much, slept too little, dreamed too fiercely. But the illness deepened. It sank its cold fingers into his bones, it drained the color from his face, it stole the strength from his body, the way winter steals life from a dying leaf. Day after day, hour after hour, Nikola slipped further away. His mother sat beside him, her hands trembling as she placed cool cloths on his burning forehead. His father prayed, a desperate, breaking sound, echoing off the old wooden walls. And Nikola, he drifted. In fever, he saw visions. Blinding lights, whirling forms, fractured glimpses of machines that had not yet been invented. He later said it felt like his mind was being pulled towards some other realm, a place between this world and the next. Some nights, he could hear whispers, on the edge of consciousness, soft, strange, unfamiliar voices, calling him, inviting him to let go. But even in fever, he resisted, because inside the weakening body of that teenage boy lived the stubborn, unbreakable spirit of a future legend. One night, when the moon hung pale and lonely in the sky, Nikola's father sat beside him, believing this might be the last conversation he would ever have with his son. "Rest," his father whispered, "you have fought enough. If it is God's will, you will go peacefully." But Nikola, broken, frail, trembling, opened his eyes with surprising strength, and whispered words that would change his destiny forever. "If I live, I want to study engineering. I want to become an inventor. I want to change the world." Those words, spoken from a dying bed, rose through the darkness, like the first spark of lightning before a storm. His father froze. He had always wanted Nikola to become a priest, a man of the church, a man obedient to tradition. But now, as he watched the soft glow of determination in his fading son's eyes, he felt something ancient loosen inside him. Perhaps fate had spoken. Perhaps destiny was rewriting itself in real time. Perhaps this boy was meant for something greater than either of them could yet imagine. And so his father placed his hand over Nikola's frail fingers and whispered back, "If you live, if your spirit chooses to stay in this world, I promise you this, you will go to the finest engineering school, you will follow your calling. You will become what you were born to be." A tear slid from the corner of Nikola's eye, not fear, not sadness, but relief, as though he had finally spoken aloud the truth that had lived silently in his heart. From that night forward, his battle changed. He was no longer fighting death. He was fighting to protect the dream that had finally been spoken into light. Days became weeks, weeks became months, his body trembled, his breath weakened, the world blurred, and yet, slowly, against all expectation, life began pulling him back. The fever broke, his strength returned like a timid sunrise, his eyes regained their fire. The storm of illness, as fierce as it had been, began to fade. Neighbors called it a miracle. Doctors called it impossible. His mother called it mercy, but Nikola called it destiny, because he believed. With the stubbornness of a soul forged in lightning, that he had been given back his life, for a reason. When he finally walked out of his room, for the first time in months, he did not see the world as he had before. Colors were brighter, light felt alive, shadows seemed full of meaning. He had stood at the threshold of death, he had peered into the unknown, he had heard the whispers of another realm, and he had returned, with a promise burning inside him, "I will change the world." But fate is rarely simple. There was another shadow he had to confront, a grief so deep that it would shape every corner of his heart and mind forever. It came with the loss of his older brother. The brilliant, elegant, admired Dane Tesla. Dane was everything a family hopes for: graceful, talented, gifted in ways few could understand. He was the shining star of the Tesla household, the one everyone believed would achieve greatness. And then, in one cruel moment, he was gone. A horse-riding accident, a scream, a fall, a stillness too heavy to bear. The grief tore through the family like a storm with no mercy. But for Nikola, it became a wound that never truly healed. Some whispered that Nikola saw the accident with his own eyes, others whispered that Dane died in his arms. The truth is lost to time, but what survives is the weight of that memory, pressing on Nikola's soul. For the rest of his life, his father drowned in sorrow, his mother's spirit dimmed, the household grew quiet, too quiet, as if even sound was afraid to disturb the fragile grief in the air, and Nikola, he suddenly felt the unbearable pressure of a family's unspoken expectation. The elder son was gone, the brilliant heir was lost, and all eyes turned to the thin, strange, dream-filled younger boy. He became, whether he wanted it or not, the new vessel of the family's hopes. He felt responsible for living enough, for 2 lives, for carrying a future meant for someone else, for filling a void that could never truly be filled. It was too much for a boy who still heard visions in flashes of light, but that grief, that shadow, that unbearable burden, shaped him, it carved him, it sharpened him, it cut away every piece of complacency, and left behind a soul that would stop at nothing. To prove that his life, spared once by mercy, was not a mistake, he threw himself into books, with the hunger of a starving heart, searching for meaning. He devoured knowledge, he memorized entire volumes, he mastered mathematics, physics, languages. Not because he wanted to impress anyone, but because the pursuit of understanding felt like the only way to keep the darkness at bay. He wanted to build, he wanted to create, he wanted to transform the world, as though doing so might somehow heal the wound left by his brother's death. But he also wanted silence, the silence that only understanding brings, the silence that only invention offers, the silence that comes when the mind is so focused that grief has no room to breathe. So he studied day and night until exhaustion blurred his vision, and his hands trembled from endless writing. And out of that ocean of grief, a new force began rising in him, stronger than before, sharper than before, fiercer than before. Purpose. He would not waste the life that had been returned to him. He would not allow his brother's brilliance to vanish into the dust of memory. He would not die unknown, unheard, unseen. He would become the spark his family now needed, and the world was destined to receive. That was the moment the dream of Nikola Tesla was born. But the road he would walk was not paved in glory. It would lead him to brilliance, and to heartbreak, to discovery, and to betrayal, to triumph, and to loneliness so deep it echoed inside his bones. But that is the nature of those who carry lightning inside them. The world fears what shines too brightly, and Tesla was already beginning to shine. When Nikola Tesla stepped into the world of higher learning, he did not walk through the gates as an ordinary student. He walked as someone who had already bargained with destiny, as someone who had looked death in the eyes, and returned with a vow burning in his soul. His survival had not been an accident. He felt that, he knew that. Every footstep he took toward the Polytechnic Institute in Graz carried the weight of a promise whispered on a sickbed, sealed with hope, and delivered to the future. With trembling but determined hands, I will change the world. The first day of his university life was not filled with excitement, the way it is for most young minds. For Tesla, it was filled with hunger, a hunger not for food, but for understanding. He stepped into lecture halls, the way a sailor returns to the sea, with a strange, instinctive familiarity, as though his soul had waited for this moment, for years beyond counting. He sat in the front row, not out of pride, but out of necessity. His mind absorbed knowledge, the way fire absorbs oxygen. Professors quickly realized that this thin, quiet student, with the piercing eyes, was unlike anyone they had ever taught. Where others took notes, Tesla memorized. Where others copied diagrams, Tesla reconstructed entire machines inside his mind, revolving them, disassembling them, rebuilding them, testing them, perfecting them, all in silence, all without paper, all without a single tool. One professor, watching Tesla complete complex calculations, faster than the chalk could touch the board, whispered to a colleague, "This young man will give the world something vast, or he will break under the weight of his own brilliance." But brilliance can be terrifying, even to the brilliant. Tesla studied with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. He slept only a few hours a night, pacing the dormitory halls, burning with ideas he could not yet explain. He devoured books, entire shelves of them, until the pages blurred, and his vision trembled. It was not ambition that drove him, it was compulsion, it was instinct, it was something deeper than desire, something nameless, but destiny, as always, was waiting for him in the shadows, and it arrived, in the shape of a classroom demonstration. It was a simple lesson, a lesson meant to illustrate the limitations of machinery. The professor held up a small direct current motor. It hummed, sputtered, struggled, its brushes sparked where metal kissed metal. Its motion was uneven, wasting energy with every turn, and then the professor said a phrase that would divide Tesla's life into before and after. You see, gentlemen, a perfect motor is impossible. A motor must rely on direct current, and direct current will always require brushes. All machines must obey their limits. The students nodded. It made sense, it was logical, it was accepted, but Nikola Tesla felt something shift. Something inside him, silent, powerful, certain, rose like lightning through his spine. He stared at the struggling motor, with a strange stillness in his eyes. A stillness that frightened the professor, because in that moment, Tesla was not looking at the motor for what it was, he was looking at it for what it could be. And then, softly, but with conviction, he said, "No, it does not have to be that way. A perfect motor is possible, a motor without brushes, a motor that runs on alternating current." The professor laughed, not cruelly, not mockingly, just dismissively. He had spent a lifetime studying the limits of machines. He knew what could be done, and what could not, and this young man, barely grown, sickly thin, with fire in his eyes, was telling him the entire foundation of electricity was wrong. The class laughed with him, but Tesla did not laugh. He saw, in a single flash of insight, a motor turning smoothly, silently, powerfully, without brushes, without sparks, without waste. He saw electric currents, dancing like partners in a waltz, flowing forward, then backward, in perfect symmetry. He saw a world powered by AC electricity, a world brighter, safer, stronger. He saw it, as clearly as if it already existed, but vision is a lonely thing, Tesla tried to explain. He spoke of rotating magnetic fields, of currents that could oscillate, of systems that could transform power across great distances. The professor shook his head. Impossible, ridiculous, nonsense. But Tesla, young, stubborn, burning, stood his ground. The argument grew heated, voices rose, chalk snapped. The class ended in anger. That night, Tesla walked alone through the streets of Graz, rain falling around him in shimmering sheets. He felt the sting of humiliation, the ache of rejection, the bitterness of being misunderstood, but beneath those emotions, something more powerful stirred, conviction. For the idea that struck him that day was not a guess, not a theory, not a dream, it was a truth. It lived in him, like a heartbeat. He could see the motor, every curve, every coil, every motion, as vividly as if it were already built. For days, he wandered in a trance. He forgot to eat, he forgot to sleep, he lost track of time. His mind spun, like the motor he imagined, relentless, ceaseless, unstoppable. He drew designs on stray pieces of paper, on the edges of books, on the backs of receipts. He murmured calculations under his breath, as though reciting a prayer. His classmates found him strange. His professors found him difficult, but Tesla was beginning to understand what few ever do. Innovation is born, not from knowledge, but from defiance. One evening, he stood by the river Moor, watching the water swirl, in endless circular motion, and there, in the rhythm of the current, in the poetry of nature, he finally saw it, the answer. He dropped to his knees on the riverbank, drawing shapes into the wet earth with trembling fingers, loops, arcs, coils, rotations, the motor, the field, the system. It was all there, complete, perfect, and as the river whispered beside him, Tesla whispered back, "I will show them, I will build it, I will bring it into the world." From that night forward, his life belonged to the dream of AC power, but dreams, no matter how brilliant, do not shield us from reality. Tesla's perfectionism began to consume him. He studied with such intensity that professors worried for his health. He pushed himself beyond human limits. 4 hours of sleep became 2, 2 became 1, 1 became none. He worked until his hands shook, until his vision blurred, until he collapsed from exhaustion. His professors admired him and feared for him. One wrote to Tesla's father, "Your son is working himself to death. His mind is extraordinary, but his body is failing. If he does not rest, he will not survive. Tesla ignored the warnings. He believed rest was a luxury he could not afford. He studied through meals, through nights, through sickness. He memorized entire textbooks. In one reading, he learned languages as easily as breathing. He mastered mathematics with terrifying speed, but perfection is a double-edged blade, and one day, it cut him deeply. He lost his scholarship. His brilliant performance could not hide the fact that he had missed deadlines, missed requirements, missed pieces of the academic structure, that his restless genius resisted. One moment, he stood at the peak of promise, the next, he was falling, untethered. Unprepared, unprotected, the humiliation broke him. He felt he had failed his father, failed his mother, failed his brother's memory, failed the destiny he believed had been carved into him. He left Graz in silence, not as a scholar, not as an engineer, but as a young man whose dreams seemed to slip through his trembling fingers. But genius has a way of surviving storms. Tesla walked away, not defeated, but awakened. He carried with him a vision so powerful that it outlived the institution that had rejected him. He walked away, knowing the truth. He had glimpsed a future no one else could see, and he would chase it with every breath left in him. My dear listener, as we slip deeper into this tale of genius and quiet sorrow, let us drift again into the life of the man who walked among us, yet belonged to some other realm entirely. Nikola Tesla had stepped into the shining heart of New York City, a place glowing with new hopes, new machines, new people, all racing toward a future they barely understood. But Tesla, he did not race, he floated through it, like a ghost of tomorrow, wandering through the streets of today. The year was 1884, and New York was bursting with fire, ambition, and steel. Tall chimneys spat smoke into the sky, factories hummed like restless beasts, carriages rattled, crowds pushed, newsboys shouted, and underneath all that noise, the heartbeat of a rising civilization pounded, quick, fierce, unstoppable. Yet for Tesla, this city became something else entirely, a strange labyrinth of both promise and pain. He arrived with only 4 cents in his pocket, a few poems, and a head filled with visions that the world might not yet be ready to hold. He was tall, thin as a shadow, with eyes that glowed like dim blue stars. New York looked at him and saw a stranger, but he looked at New York and saw a canvas, a blank universe on which he could draw lightning. For a short time, everything seemed promising. He worked under Thomas Edison, the great American inventor, praised by newspapers, and crowned as the Wizard of Menlo Park. But fate is never so simple. Edison believed in power built on muscle, on giant machines, heavy wires, and direct current that crawled slowly through a city, like an exhausted animal. Tesla believed in something else, a power born from elegance, from harmony, from invisible forces that danced freely in the air, like angels made of electricity. They were 2 minds, 2 visions, 2 worlds, and worlds do not easily merge. In those days, Tesla worked endlessly. He repaired engines, redesigned circuits, solved problems that other engineers could not name. He slept little, ate even less, and spent nights staring at the ceiling, letting ideas pour through him, like rivers shining in the dark. People whispered that Tesla saw equations in the air, that he heard the faint hum of electricity, even in silence, that he could feel currents move under the ground, as if the earth itself were breathing. These whispers were true. He walked with a mind so powerful that imagination and reality danced together like twins. But not everyone welcomed this brilliance. One evening, after months of hard work, Tesla presented to Edison his great gift, a design that fixed and improved Edison's motors, saving time, money, and energy. Edison laughed, a short, hard laugh that struck Tesla like a slap. My dear Nikola, he said, I think you don't understand American humor. A promise of $50,000, a fortune, a dream, evaporated into smoke. Tesla swallowed his pride. He thanked Edison, then he walked away, into the night, into the cold, into the unknown. For a long time, he worked alone in the dark corners of the city, digging ditches, laying pipes, performing work meant for men who had no dreams. He, whose mind soared among lightning, now stood knee-deep in mud. He, who imagined machines that could change the world, now shoveled earth in silence, to survive another day. Yet listen closely, dear heart, For here lies the beauty of heroes like him, even when life buries them under weight and humiliation. Their light hides, but does not die. Tesla worked, but inside him, the storm grew. Every crack of the shovel, every ache in his hands, every hungry night, poured fire into his resolve. One evening, as he looked at the city from a lonely pier, he whispered to himself, "They may take my time, but they cannot take my visions." And in that moment, beneath the flickering gas lamps of New York, a vow was born, a powerful, silent oath, that no man should ever underestimate him again. The world had pushed him down, but Tesla was preparing to rise, through struggle, through rejection, through the shadows of the city that nearly swallowed him. He sharpened himself into a blade of destiny, and soon, very soon, a meeting would arrive that would change everything. A meeting that would lift him from darkness and set him on a path toward brilliance so bright that even history still squints when it tries to look directly at him. But that, my dear listener, is where the next chapter begins. The night that nearly broke Nikola Tesla was also the night that quietly held his rebirth. New York City glimmered with cold lights as Tesla wandered the streets, exhausted, his boots worn thin, his spirit stretched between hope and despair. He had left Edison, he had left the promise of wealth that was never truly promised, he had left the one place where he believed his genius might bloom. But sometimes, fate is not a staircase, sometimes it is a cliff, and only after falling do we discover that we have wings. Tesla was working in a trench. Mud up to his knees, hands blistered, the cold biting into bone, like an unkind memory. He was not meant for this. Every person who passed him could see it in the way he carried himself, tall, dignified, a bit otherworldly, like a prince lost in the wrong kingdom. But destiny always has eyes, always. And one afternoon, as the city's noises echoed through the air, Tesla's life shifted. A man named A.K. Brown, from the Western Union Company, had heard the whispers, the rumors, about a tall young foreigner, with lightning in his thoughts, and galaxies hidden behind his calm blue eyes. Brown arranged a meeting, and just like that, Tesla stood once again in a room where his ideas were not laughed at, but listened to. He drew on the chalkboard, with movements graceful as calligraphy, explaining alternating current, a power that pulsed, not in one direction, but back and forth, like the tide of an invisible sea, where Edison's direct current crawled slowly, dying after a mile. Tesla's alternating current leapt across miles, with the freedom of a wild horse, running across endless plains. The men in the room were silent, their eyes widening, their minds racing, their breath held, as though the universe itself had paused to eavesdrop. Tesla did not boast, he did not push, he simply revealed the blueprint that had lived inside his mind for years. Machines spinning in perfect harmony, coils humming with elegant rhythm, energy transforming itself again and again, like alchemy made real. When he finished, there was a moment, so quiet that even the dust in the air felt still. And then, A.K. Brown spoke words that would change Tesla's future. "Mr. Tesla, we will fund your work." Just like that, the door that Edison slammed shut opened again, but this time it opened into destiny. Tesla's first laboratory was modest, smelling faintly of metal and paper, filled with little more than tools and dreams. But as he stepped inside, he felt a familiar warmth, the warmth of belonging, the warmth of purpose. Machines blossomed under his hands, as though they had been waiting for him. Motors spun with a grace that made even engineers whisper in awe. Coils sparked with beauty that was somehow both wild and disciplined. His alternating current system began to breathe, to live, to grow, and with it, Tesla grew too. He worked late into the night, sometimes forgetting to eat, sometimes forgetting to sleep, his mind drifting into a place between science and dream. Visitors to his lab would find him standing motionless, eyes unfocused, not staring at the machine, but into the future version of it, already perfected in his mind. He once said, "I build every machine in my imagination first. I test it there. I run it there. Only when it works flawlessly do I build it in the real world." And dear listener, that was true magic. Soon, his brilliance reached ears far beyond that little laboratory, and across the city, another giant stirred, the industrial titan, George Westinghouse. He was a man of immense influence, a man who believed in bold ideas, and he saw in Tesla a force powerful enough to shape the very bones of modern civilization. the day they met, was not grand, not loud, but history felt its tremor. Westinghouse listened, as Tesla explained AC power, with the calmness of a monk, and the passion of a poet. He watched Tesla's hands move, like he was sculpting electricity in the air, and when the demonstration ended, Westinghouse simply said, "I would like to buy your patents." Tesla nodded, and when asked for his price, he spoke softly, without hesitation, $50,000. Westinghouse smiled, done. It was not a negotiation, it was recognition, respect, a moment between two minds that understood each other's fire, but there was something else. Something that made Tesla. When Westinghouse offered him royalties, a percentage of every home, powered by alternating current, Tesla paused. He sensed that charging too much would burden Westinghouse's company. He sensed that greed could slow progress. He sensed that the dream itself was more important than the gold, so he tore the royalty contract in half. Some say it cost him hundreds of millions, some say billions, but for Tesla, the world was worth more than wealth, and thus began the great alliance that would ignite the legendary War of Currents, a war that would shake the world before it illuminated it. But that war, that fierce storm of politics, pride, media attacks, and scientific brilliance, awaits in the next chapter. For now, let us leave Tesla in this moment, reborn, recognized, and ready to bring light to a world still living halfway in shadow. My dear listener, prepare yourself now, for this chapter is not merely history, it is a storm, a clash, a war waged not with swords, but with ideas so powerful they could light the world or burn it down. The moment Nikola Tesla joined George Westinghouse, a whisper began in crowded streets and smoky taverns. A new power is coming, a power that may replace Edison himself. And whispers, when heard by men of influence, can become thunder. Thomas Edison. Fierce, proud, determined, a man who had built an empire with the strength of his own hands, saw Tesla's alternating current as a threat to everything he had created, and so, the war of currents began. But this was not a war of fairness, it was not a war of honor, it was a war of fear, of ego, of powerful men unwilling to let go of the throne they had built. Edison believed in direct current, steady, simple, but limited. It could not travel far, it required expensive stations every few blocks. Tesla's alternating current flowed like a river, alive, flexible, able to travel miles upon miles, like a wind that never tires. The world did not yet understand the beauty of AC power, and Edison wanted to make sure it never did, so he began a campaign. Dark, clever, relentless, he hired press writers to tell people that alternating current was deadly, a wild beast that would leap from wires and kill without warning. He arranged public demonstrations. Oh, dear listener, these were the darkest moments. In crowded squares, under harsh daylight, animals were brought in, dogs, calves, even horses. Edison's team used alternating current to shock them to death in front of terrified crowds. To prove, he claimed, that Tesla's vision was a danger to humanity. Imagine Tesla in those days, reading newspapers filled with lies, and witnessing the public turn frightened eyes toward the very technology he dreamed would free them. He did not fight with anger, he did not scream, he did not twist himself in bitterness. Instead, he worked, quietly, endlessly, with the calm of a man who believes the truth needs no shouting. While Edison played politics, Tesla refined the motor, he perfected the transformer. He improved the generators until they hummed with almost musical precision. Meanwhile, Westinghouse faced his own battles. His company, brave but still growing, was pressured from all sides. Banks hesitated, investors trembled, competitors tightened their grip around anything that could crush him. But Westinghouse believed in Tesla with a loyalty rare among giants. He stood firm even when the financial storms grew violent enough to bring any empire to its knees. And then, a miracle of opportunity arrived. A new wonder of America was rising, a breathtaking carnival of lights and nations. The World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, in Chicago, hundreds of thousands would visit. Newspapers around the world would report on it. It would be the largest celebration of invention in modern history. The question echoed, who will power the fair? Edison's company believed it was already decided. After all, Edison was the wizard, the hero, the face of electricity, but when the bids were opened, Edison's proposal was shockingly expensive and technologically strained. Westinghouse, confident, steady, submitted Tesla's alternating current system at a far lower price, and with far greater capability. The committee made its choice. The fair would be powered by Tesla. In that moment, the tide shifted. When Chicago opened its gates, the world gasped. More than 200,000 light bulbs blazed against the night sky, like stars brought down to earth and arranged by human hands. For the first time in history, an entire city square was lit by alternating current. Soft, steady, safe, like a dream made real. People who had feared AC power stood mesmerized. Children pointed, couples held hands, old men wiped tears from their eyes, for they knew they were witnessing the dawn of a new era. Tesla walked among the crowds with quiet, gentle pride. He watched the lights shimmer like a sea of white fire, and whispered to a friend beside him, "You are gazing upon my dreams." Newspapers across the world declared AC power the future. The war was not fully over, but the battlefield had tipped in Tesla's favor. But the greatest victory was still yet to come, not in a city, but in nature itself. One of the most powerful rivers on earth waited in the north, a river wild enough to shake the very ground beneath it, a river called Niagara. Builders dreamed that if anyone could harness the force of those falls and turn it into electricity, they could power entire states, maybe the whole world. Companies competed fiercely to win the contract. Many doubted Tesla's designs were strong enough, stable enough, safe enough to control such a mighty giant. But after years of debate, the commission made its decision. Once again, they chose Tesla's system. Construction began. Massive turbines heavy as mountains were lowered into stone. Copper coils were wound like great spirals of destiny, and Tesla's brilliant polyphase system, balanced, elegant, as harmonious as a symphony, brought the pieces together. And finally, on a winter night in 1896, something extraordinary happened. The generators roared to life, the ground trembled, the air sparked, and the power of Niagara Falls began flowing across miles of wire to the city of Buffalo, igniting lamps with the gentle glow of a new age. Reporters wrote, "Tesla has captured the roar of Niagara and turned it into music." In that moment, the war of currents ended. Edison's DC system bowed before the undeniable triumph of Tesla's AC power. But victory, my dear listener, does strange things to a man who never desired fame or fortune or the throne of invention. Tesla won the war, but fate had not finished shaping him. The shadows that had followed him quietly were about to draw closer, for when a man rises too high, the world often grows uneasy. And in the next part, we will enter the chapter where Tesla's dreams grow grander, stranger, more beautiful, and more dangerous. The world embraced his light, but soon it would fear the brilliance that lay beyond it. My dear listener, come with me now into a chapter where brilliance becomes a burden, where dreams grow so large that the world itself begins to tremble beneath them. Nikola Tesla had won the war of currents, across America, across Europe, across the whispering corridors of scientific circles. His name became a beacon, the man who tamed lightning, the mind who turned waterfalls into power, the visionary who reshaped modern civilization. But for Tesla, victory was never a finish line, it was only a doorway, and beyond that doorway waited dreams, so vast, so shimmering, so beautifully strange, that even his allies struggled to follow him. Let us step now into that season of Tesla's life. The season of impossible ideas that only he believed were possible. The age of wonder begins. After Niagara, Tesla stood upon the peak of scientific fame. He lectured in grand halls where chandeliers glittered overhead, and crowds held their breath as he spoke softly of worlds yet to be invented. He demonstrated wireless lamps that glowed in people's hands like captured stars. He created electric fields that made light dance across metal plates without a single wire. He produced arcs of violet lightning in glass bulbs, so mesmerizing that audiences gasped, as if witnessing magic. And yet Tesla would simply smile, a little lonely, as if he were showing children only the first page of a 1,000-page book, for the future he saw was far grander. He spoke of machines that could send power through the earth itself, electricity delivered like a whisper from one coast to another, without wires, without limits. He spoke of communication carried through the air, voices leaping across oceans, messages traveling like invisible birds, between continents. People stared at him, with awe and confusion. Some called him a prophet, some called him a madman, but Tesla only continued to dream. The night of visions. There were evenings when Tesla dined alone, in quiet restaurants, a napkin folded perfectly on his lap, his posture elegant, his eyes locked somewhere far away, far beyond the walls, beyond the city, beyond the century. Waiters learned not to disturb him, for there were moments when Tesla became utterly still, as if the world had paused, and only his mind continued moving. Inside him, visions surged, machines unfolded, worlds formed, laws of nature bent gently to reveal their secrets, like flowers opening at dawn. He saw entire towers rising from the earth, sending currents through the air, lighting cities without wires, as easily as the sun lights the sky. He saw small devices, resting in the palm of a hand, that could summon music, news, voices from across the world. He saw flying machines, so graceful. They moved like silent birds, carrying people, high above the clouds. He even saw, in quiet flashes of imagination, weapons so terrible that he hesitated to fully describe them. He saw too much, and in a world that had only just learned to trust electricity. His mind lived 50, 100, perhaps 1,000 years ahead. The Wizard of 46, East Houston Street. Tesla's new laboratory was a sanctuary of brilliance, a place where coils hummed gently, like living creatures, and instruments glowed with soft electrical breath. Step inside with me, dear heart. The room is dim, the air tingles, a faint scent of ozone lingers, like the aftertaste of a storm. At one corner, a great metal coil crackles with threads of blue fire, lightning contained, tamed, whispering to Tesla, like an old friend. On another bench, glass tubes shimmer, with pale green light, strange symbols etched into them, like the alphabet of some alien language. Tesla moves through this realm, with the grace of a conductor, leading an orchestra of sparks. His long fingers touch wires gently, as if touching the nerves of the universe, and when he activates a machine, the room erupts, with shimmering arcs of violet electricity that dance around him, like halos. To the newspapers, he was the wizard. To the public, he was a man made of mystery, a living myth, who walked with lightning in his hands. But behind the wonder, a quiet loneliness began to settle, for the higher a man climbs, the fewer companions he finds. On the mountaintop, the shadows beneath the brilliance, Tesla's ideas grew, more vast than any laboratory could contain. But great dreams require great money. Investors who once believed in him began to hesitate, bankers grew nervous. Industrialists grew impatient, they wanted results, now. The future Tesla promised was beautiful, yes, but it was expensive, and it frightened those who could not see what he saw. Meanwhile, Edison's allies, and newer rivals in industry, whispered behind doors, urging caution, feeding doubt. How can this man deliver energy through the air? How can he power the whole world, without wires, and without us making money from it? How can we trust a dreamer who walks the line between genius and madness? These questions grew roots. They sprouted into suspicion, into resistance, and slowly, the world that once applauded him began to retreat. Tesla felt this shift, like a cold wind, blowing across the back of his neck, but he did not argue, he did not plead. He simply retreated deeper, into his imagination, into the one place where the world never doubted him. Yet even a mind like Tesla's cannot outrun reality forever, a light too bright for its time. Tesla was now dreaming of something enormous, a tower so tall, so powerful, so miraculous, that it could change the entire direction of human civilization. He saw it clearly, he felt it in his bones, he believed this was his purpose. But purpose often asks a price, and the world, dear listener, was not ready for what Tesla was about to attempt. In the next chapter, we will step into the making of Tesla's greatest dream, the Wardenclyffe Tower, a dream that might have changed humanity itself, and the dream that nearly destroyed him. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world rested beneath a blanket of silence, Nikola Tesla would often wander barefoot through his laboratory. Sparks flickered at his fingertips as if loyal fireflies hovered to guide him. It was in these solitary moments that he felt closest to the truth, closer to unlocking the secrets of the universe than any man alive. But brilliance, my dear listeners, always casts a shadow, and as Tesla's influence grew, so did the forces determined to silence him. The first signs of a threat, a strange pattern began to haunt Tesla's nights. Letters arrived unaddressed, footsteps echoed outside his laboratory long after everyone left, and more than once, Tesla found his papers disturbed, shifted, touched, explored by an unseen visitor. He confided only in one person, a journalist and friend who came to interview him late one evening. Tesla spoke softly. "There are men," he said, "who see my inventions not as progress, but as a threat to their empires. They fear what they cannot control." His friend asked, "Do you fear them?" Tesla smiled faintly, "No. But I fear the world they want to build." Outside, thunder rolled across the night sky, almost as if nature itself was listening. The secret meeting. One winter evening, Tesla was summoned to a private gathering, an elite group of industrialists, business magnates, and government officials. The room was heavy with cigar smoke and ambition. They offered Tesla everything he had never had: money, resources, a team of thousands, and unlimited power, but only if he agreed to one condition: "Your wireless power project must belong entirely to us. We decide who receives light, who receives darkness, and who pays for both." Tesla remained silent for several long moments. The men leaned in, convinced they had him cornered, but Tesla finally raised his head, his eyes glowing with fierce resolve. "Gentlemen, electricity belongs to humanity. You cannot own the sun, and you cannot own the lightning." The room froze. One man slammed his fist onto the table. "Then understand this, Tesla, if you will not work with us, you will not work at all." Tesla walked out without another word, and from that moment, the war began. The sabotage begins. Strange accidents struck his projects one after another. Transformers exploded without reason, wires went missing, investors withdrew overnight. Rumors spread that Tesla had lost his mind, that he was dangerous, that his inventions were impossible. This was no coincidence. This was character assassination, precise, strategic, and merciless. Morgan, Edison, and others who felt threatened by Tesla's innovations pressed harder. They couldn't afford a world where energy was free, wireless, and universal. For them, Tesla's dream meant the collapse of their empires. For Tesla, it meant the liberation of mankind. The growing isolation. Tesla's friends warned him, "Stop. Lay low. Let this go." But Tesla responded with quiet conviction, "If I abandon this, I abandon humanity's future." He began working alone, day and night, pushing himself beyond exhaustion. He often forgot to eat. He slept only a few hours. He wrote notes in frantic bursts, driven by a feeling that time was running out. The more the world pushed him away, the brighter his inner fire grew. The experiment that shook the city. One night in Colorado Springs, Tesla attempted a test that would become legend. He increased the power of his transmitter beyond safe limits, determined to prove that wireless energy could be real, practical, and infinite. The ground trembled, the sky lit up, bolts of lightning 20 times the height of a man burst upward from the tower. People miles away saw the sky turn white, lights flickered across the entire city, and for a moment, just a moment, Tesla believed he had succeeded. He whispered to himself, "This is the future." But the next morning, the local power company cut him off entirely, claiming his experiments were disruptive and dangerous. Funding dried up, supplies stopped, his laboratory was threatened with closure. But Tesla, ever defiant, wrote in his journal, "They can cut off my power, but they cannot dim my vision." The offer from the shadows. In the weeks that followed, Tesla received a mysterious visit. A man in a dark coat appeared at the edge of his lab. He spoke without introducing himself. "We know what you are building, and we know what it means. Work with us, we can protect your inventions and your life." Tesla studied the man carefully. "And who, exactly, is we?" The man smiled, "People who prefer to stay invisible." Tesla's reply was simple, "I do not build weapons. I do not build for control. Leave." The man's expression shifted from polite to cold, as if a mask had slipped. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Tesla. Some knowledge is too powerful to be left unguarded." He vanished into the night. and Tesla understood that he was now standing alone, not just against businessmen, not just against rivals, but against a hidden network of powerful forces who feared change more than anything. The Journal of Secrets. Over the next months, Tesla began writing encrypted notebooks, filled with formulas, diagrams, and inventions that the world had never seen. He wrote them in a code only he understood, a safety measure, a shield, a way to ensure that if anything happened to him, his knowledge could never be misused. He whispered to himself as he wrote, "They can take my labs, my money, my machines, but they will never take my mind." The wind outside howled, carrying distant thunder, almost as if nature itself stood guard. The rumors of a weapon. Then came the most dangerous rumor of all. Tesla was working on a machine capable of unimaginable power. Some said it was a death ray. Others said it could end war. Some believed it could destroy entire armies without a single soldier stepping onto the battlefield. Newspapers twisted his words, governments panicked, shadowy groups doubled their surveillance, but Tesla's true intention remained pure. If a weapon is terrible enough, perhaps war will become impossible. Yet humanity was not ready for such a dream, and Tesla sensed that the invention in his mind could save the world, or devastate it, so he made a choice. He deliberately hid key parts of the design, he split the knowledge across multiple journals, and he stored them in different places, ensuring no one could ever assemble the complete machine. It became one of history's greatest secrets. The chill of betrayal. As the pressure increased, Tesla realized something devastating. Someone close to him, someone he trusted, was leaking information. He discovered missing notes, copied diagrams, and subtle marks on his locked drawers. The betrayal cut him deeper than any financial ruin. Tesla whispered to the empty room, "Even the brightest light must guard itself from shadows." And just like that, he withdrew completely from the public eye. He worked alone, he trusted no one. He walked the path of a warrior who fought not with weapons, but with imagination. The unbreakable soul. Despite the conspiracies, the sabotage, the betrayal, and the threats, Tesla never stopped dreaming. He never surrendered to fear, he never bent to power, he never allowed darkness to silence him, because Tesla knew one truth the world had yet to understand: ideas are bulletproof, lightning cannot be killed, and a mind on fire is a force no empire can contain. And so he continued, he created, he imagined, he built, he dreamt of a world not ruled by greed, but uplifted by light, a world free, connected, and empowered, a world that someday, he believed, humanity would be worthy of. My dear listener, now we arrive at a chapter of both wonder and tragedy, a chapter where Nikola Tesla, armed with vision brighter than the sun, tried to gift the world something it had never imagined, only to be tested by fate, betrayal, and human limitation. This is the story of Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla's great dream, a monument to light, power, and the limitless potential of the mind. The vision of the tower. Tesla imagined a tower that could transmit electricity wirelessly, through the air, across oceans, to every corner of the globe. He saw it as more than just a machine, it was a symbol of hope, a beacon of human progress. No longer would energy be confined to wires, or sold only to the wealthy. Everyone, farms, schools, hospitals, cities, could have light. He called it Wardenclyffe Tower, and the location was chosen with care, a coastal stretch of land in Long Island, where the Atlantic whispered secrets to the soil. He imagined lightning arcing between the towers, dancing across the heavens, a silent symphony of power and freedom. The beginning of the work, construction began with optimism. Steel rose from the earth. Copper wires wound in coils gleamed like captured sunrays. Tesla oversaw every detail, walking the site with the precision of a conductor leading a delicate orchestra. Investors were initially supportive. Among them was J.P. Morgan, a man of vast wealth and vision, who believed he could back Tesla's genius and profit from it. But here, as often happens, the world's appetite for wonder clashed with its appetite for control. The cracks in the foundation. Morgan grew wary. He did not share Tesla's belief in free energy. He did not see a world where electricity flowed without cost. Profit, not progress, was the measure of all things. Slowly, the support wavered, funding slowed. Workers waited for pay, materials became scarce. Tesla, ever dedicated, refused to compromise his vision. He believed the tower would work, and that the world would see its light. But human patience is fragile, even genius cannot survive without sustenance. The siege of financial pressures, despite setbacks, Tesla pressed on. He worked night and day, sleeping rarely, drawing intricate designs, calculating voltages in his mind, walking through storms of imagination that others could not comprehend. But the tower was expensive. Morgan hesitated further. The public, unaware of its purpose, whispered, "This is a folly, a dream too big for a man. He is wasting his wealth, he is wasting ours." Tesla ignored them, yet the isolation began to weigh on him. The tower stood tall, its skeletal form piercing the sky, but without full support. It was a fragile monument. The isolation of genius. Tesla spent long nights at the tower. Sometimes, he would stand atop it, looking at the ocean, and whisper to the wind, "You will see, you will understand, and the world will be free." The locals began to speak of him as eccentric, the man who talks to the air. His meals were irregular, his habits strange. Some claimed he slept in the lab, others said he had strange rituals, like counting pigeons outside his window. But in truth, Tesla's mind was a cathedral, vast, luminous, and dangerously beautiful. Every quirk, every obsession, was a note in the symphony of his genius. The failure of the world to understand. Despite his brilliance, the world did not yet understand Tesla. Investors withdrew entirely, Morgan pulled back, creditors pressed, the tower could not be completed. Tesla tried to negotiate, to explain, to demonstrate, but no one would listen. The tower became a symbol, not of triumph, but of a dream crushed under human greed and fear. Tesla's finances collapsed, his personal fortune was gone, and yet, even as the world turned its back, Tesla never stopped believing. "It is not the world that must catch up to me," he whispered, "it is humanity that must awaken." The legacy of the tower, Wardenclyffe Tower, never reached full operation. Its steel skeleton would eventually be dismantled. The dream of free energy, transmitted invisibly through the air, would not come to pass in Tesla's lifetime. Yet, dear listener, the tower was more than a machine. It was a testament to the power of imagination, a proof that one man, armed only with vision, can challenge the limits of reality. Even in ruin, Tesla's mind remained unbroken. He continued to invent, to imagine, to push the boundaries of science, and in the whispers of those who study history, the tower still stands, in spirit, in possibility, in the brilliance of a man who refused to compromise his dream. The man among pigeons. Tesla would retreat further into solitude, feeding pigeons in the park, finding companionship in the eyes of creatures who could not betray or judge. Yet in every fluttering wing, in every gentle coo, he saw the pulse of the world he longed to electrify. The tower may have fallen, the financiers may have abandoned him, the world may have mocked, but Nikola Tesla remained a lighthouse. In the storm of humanity's greed and fear, "I do not fear failure," he whispered to the night, "I fear only that mankind may never see the light I carry." And so, dear listener, Tesla's story moves now toward its final act, a time of solitude, recognition, and reflection, where the man who challenged the world must confront it one last time. My dear listener, we have followed Nikola Tesla through triumph, struggle, brilliance, and isolation. Now we arrive at the final chapter, where history gazes upon him, where the world begins to understand, and where the true measure of a hero is revealed. Tesla, the man of lightning, the dreamer of towers, the quiet genius who walked alone, was aging in a world that did not yet fully embrace him, the quiet of old age. By the 1920s and 1930s, Tesla lived modestly, often in New York hotels, alone but for a few devoted friends, and the pigeons that had become his silent companions. He still carried the fire of imagination, he still dreamed of wireless energy, of machines that could communicate across continents, of electricity flowing invisibly to every home on Earth. But the world was indifferent. Young inventors hailed the age of radio, television, and industrial machines. Names like Edison and Marconi were celebrated, while Tesla's contributions were often ignored or overshadowed. Yet he continued to create, to experiment, to think beyond what anyone else could even imagine. The inventions of the mind. Even in modest rooms, Tesla built devices that defied understanding. Small generators, oscillators, and mysterious coils filled his workspaces. Visitors often reported awe and wonder. They saw sparks that danced like captured auroras, machines that hummed with life, and blue arcs of electricity that made the air shimmer. Tesla himself treated these inventions not as a way to earn wealth or fame, but as a message to the future. the progress of humanity must not be slowed by greed or fear. Knowledge belongs to the world. Even when he lacked funding, even when doors closed, he wrote, calculated, and dreamed. He foresaw energy beamed across the sky, communication without wires, and even imagined machines that could harness the power of the sun itself. No challenge could dim the light in his mind. The recognition begins in 1931, when Tesla turned 75. Magazines and newspapers finally began to acknowledge his genius. He was featured on the cover of Time magazine, celebrated as the man who tamed lightning. The world was waking, belatedly, to the truth Tesla had known all along, that one visionary could change the course of human history. He received letters from admirers across the globe. Scientists, engineers, dreamers, thanking him for his courage, his inventions, his unwavering faith in the impossible. Even in his solitude, Tesla's life had become a beacon. The final years, Tesla's last years, were quiet, reflective, and filled with contemplation. He often walked the streets of New York, feeding pigeons, and speaking softly to the city itself, though the world had not fully embraced his vision. His soul remained unbroken. He would speak of peace, of wireless energy, of a future where humanity could thrive without greed and without war. Tesla never married. He claimed he was too dedicated to his work, that his love belonged to electricity itself. Yet those who knew him understood, the depth of his devotion to humanity was itself a kind of love, pure, unwavering, selfless. He understood the loneliness of a mind too bright for its own time. He understood that history often rewards the patient, and that truth eventually finds its way to the light. The legacy of light. Nikola Tesla passed away quietly, in New York, in 1943. The world would only gradually recognize the magnitude of his contributions. Alternating current that powers cities and homes across the planet, early work in radio and wireless communication, pioneering experiments in energy, electromagnetism, and vision for a connected world. But beyond the inventions, Tesla left something far more enduring, the example of courage, perseverance, and vision, a man who faced ridicule, sabotage, poverty, and isolation, yet never gave up on what he knew was right, a man who dreamed of a world illuminated not only by electricity, but by human imagination and potential. The eternal hero, Nikola Tesla, is remembered not just as an inventor, not just as a scientist, but as a hero of the human spirit, a hero whose battles were fought in laboratories, in the mind, and in the face of a world too small to understand him. Even today, when the night sky is streaked with lightning, or when a city glows with electric light, you can imagine Tesla's presence. You can feel his dream, that knowledge, courage, and persistence can bend reality itself. He reminds us, dear listener, that true heroes are immortal, not because they are never defeated, but because their ideas and vision live on, inspiring generations to come. The present is theirs, the future, for which I really worked, is mine. Nikola Tesla. And so, as we close this story, remember Tesla not only for the light he brought to the world, but for the fire he carried in his mind, and the unwavering belief that one person can, indeed, change history. My dear listener, you have traveled with me through storms of genius, through the sparks of invention, through the lonely corridors of a mind that dared to rewrite the laws of nature. We walked beside Nikola Tesla, a man who spoke to lightning, who dreamed for a future he would never see, and who gave humanity more than it ever gave him in return. Some heroes wield swords, some wear crowns, but Tesla carried nothing but a vision, and still changed the world. Remember this: greatness is rarely comfortable, and truth is often born in silence, but the light of a single dreamer can illuminate centuries. And so, as the echoes of his story fade, I leave you with this whisper, a reminder shaped by time itself: never fear the impossible, never bow to small minds, and never apologize for the fire that lives inside you, for in every spark, every curiosity, every impossible dream, lives the same electricity that once flowed through Tesla's soul. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Until our next tale, this is Lady Hazelthorn, wishing you courage, wonder, and a mind forever touched by the light.